Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mackenzie. Thank you for joining me. So 2020 is almost over and most of us are very excited about that and making plans for 2021. And I myself am having a few changes that are going to be happening at the very beginning of 2021. So I thought it would be a great time to sit down and chat with you guys about a few ways to create and maintain good habits and the tricks that I plan to use myself coming up in 2021 to create some new habits and schedules for myself as things change with the new year. So let's get going. For myself, at the beginning of 2021, right in January, I'm going to be changing my job up a little bit. I will still be working with my company, but I'm going to have a new role. And so my schedule is going to change, and it's actually going to change kind of for the better. If you've seen any of my previous videos, I've mentioned before that I'm a nurse. I have been working on the floor as a nurse, which can lead to some very uncertain schedules. Days off change, even for myself, times that I would go into work would change. Some mornings I would go in at 6 in the morning, sometimes I wouldn't go in until 9:30. It was not a consistent schedule in terms of what days I would be going into work. It varied a lot. So it was really hard to create any sort of schedule or habits for myself related to how to structure my day, how to structure my weekends, and just how to structure even my entire week in terms of just trying to get things done around the house for myself. It just made it very difficult because nothing was consistent. So now I will be having a very consistent schedule, which is great. I'm really excited about it, and I'm excited about the potential to just create some better habits for myself. Now I feel like I can be much more consistent in just my daily life and how I plan out my week. And so I'm very excited about it. So that's kind of what inspired me to create this video, was the changes that are going to be happening in my own life. And I thought we're about to head into a new year when everyone's trying to create better habits and better themselves and their lives. So why not share those tricks with you, and maybe they'll help you going into the new year as well. So the first thing to do when you're wanting to create some new habits is just sit down and create a plan. Know what the end result is that you want. So sit down and say, I want to make my dinner at home 5 times a week, or I want to work out 3 times a week, or I want to wake up at 7 in the morning every day, even on my days off. Whatever it may be, sit down and look at what is my end goal. This is great because we always need something to head towards. If you don't have an end goal and you just say, I want to eat at home more, or I want to work out more, you're less likely to actually stick with whatever habits you may start building when you initially have that excitement about this, because there's no end. It's just kind of open, and there's no real point where you can say, okay, I've gotten to where I wanted to be. And so it's really good to have an end goal, figure out what it is you want at the end of this. Where is your ideal, essentially? Now, the problem is many of us have no trouble coming up with this end goal, but it's where we start. This has always been the issue for me with New Year's resolutions, and it's why many of them don't work, is because people will go into the new year and say, I want to work out 5 times a week, and they'll just immediately start trying to work out 5 times a week and trying to cram that into their schedule. If you are only working out 1 or 2 times a week, suddenly trying to put 5 workouts into your week is going to feel stressful. It's going to be very difficult. It's such a sudden change from where you are now that you're not going to stick with it. It's going to become overwhelming, and it's going to feel like it's too big and you can't do it. So the second step that I have is to look at where you're starting from. Figure out, okay, how many days a week do I currently eat at home? How many days a week do I currently work out? What time do I usually wake up on the days that I work or on my days off? And figure out where you're starting from so that you know when you're making progress and you know what small steps you can take to get to that end goal. You need to know how big of a gap there is between what you're doing now and what that end goal is. Maybe it's a very small gap. Maybe you already work out 4 times a week and you want to up that to 5. That's not a very big difference, and it'll probably be pretty easy for you compared to if you only work out 2 days a week and trying to jump to 5. That's a very big difference, and it's definitely going to have a big impact on you in terms of stress and that overwhelmed feeling when you try to make a huge change like that. Trick number 3 is just to go slow. Take your time. Like I said, this is the issue with New Year's resolutions that I found is we try to just jump straight into it. If I, make a schedule for what I want my days to look like now that I'm going to be working in a different capacity and have a more set work schedule, and I just try to jump right into it and change my entire schedule, then that can be very tricky and it can be very hard, and I'm more likely to kind of fall back into old habits. Whereas if I slowly start to work in new habits and slowly start to change the way that I do things on the day-to-day, then I'm more likely to have success. So what I recommend is looking at that end goal, looking at where you're starting from now, and finding small steps that you can make in that in-between and just going really, really slow. It takes a few weeks to really build up a habit. So if you are currently working out 2 times a week, start trying to work out 3 times a week and do that for 2 or 3 weeks. Make sure you're consistent and you're set in that 3 times a week. Make sure that that becomes your habit, that you get used to that. It doesn't feel overwhelming. It feels normal to you. And then you can move on and go to working out 4 times a week. Do that for another 2 or 3 weeks until that becomes a habit and you're well ingrained into that. And then once you finally have that down, you can move on to working out 5 times a week. And if that's your end goal, then you can be there. But you've already built up your habit so that you're slowly working your way into your end goal, and you're more likely to be able to stick with your end goal because you didn't just jump from 2 days a week to 5 days a week and have this sudden change in your schedule and your habits. You slowly worked your way there and built up a change in yourself and in your mentality and in your day-to-day schedule, and you were able to give yourself the time that you need to really build up that habit and get to the place that you want to be. So it's very, very important to go slow, take things one step at a time, and make sure that that next step is really ingrained in you and it really has become a habit before you move on to the next one. If you start working out 3 days a week and you just do that for 1 week and then you jump to 4 and do that for 1 week and then jump to 5, you're still going so quickly that you haven't had time to really relax into those new habits you're creating. And so you're still much more likely to just start fading back into old habits because you just haven't had the time to really get used to the changes that you're making. Trick number 4 that I have is to start doing things on the weekends. And let me explain that a little bit. So if your new habit that you want to do is you want to start cooking at home more, and maybe you only really cook at home 1 to 2 times a week. One great thing to do is to start cooking at home more on the weekends. And this is because work days can be really stressful. Sometimes you get off of work and you're just drained. You don't feel like you have the energy to try something new, to try and add something into your load. It's too stressful, and you're just too tired and exhausted. Especially right now, if you are working, no matter where you are, it's probably so much more stressful than it has been in the past. All of our jobs in some way or another have changed with these crazy times. There's just a lot of added stress to your job, no matter what it is. And so if instead of pressuring yourself on those stressful days to then go home and make a meal for yourself when you're used to being able to just go home, sit on the couch, maybe order some food and eat your dinner, it's going to be really hard to create that habit just because it takes so much more energy and you just are creating more stress for yourself. So instead, what I would recommend is maybe starting on the weekends. Maybe if you're barely cooking for yourself at home now, just add on to it that every weekend you cook for yourself instead of going out to eat or ordering in. And then once you start to do that, you'll still build up that habit a little bit of cooking for yourself. You'll get used to cooking for yourself. You'll get used to planning out meals and thinking of ideas. You'll get used to being in the kitchen, and then you can slowly start to incorporate that into your work week. And maybe, on just a day that's not as stressful, you say, okay, today I think I can make myself some dinner. I don't feel as exhausted. I don't feel as stressed. And you can slowly start to incorporate that into your work week. But because work days can be so stressful for many of us, it's really hard to build habits on those days just because you're so mentally and sometimes even emotionally, physically drained on work days. I know I often am. It can just feel like too much to try and add in a new habit. Even though you know it's good for you and it's something you want to do, we have to take care of ourselves still mentally and emotionally and physically. And sometimes that means ordering in. Sometimes that means just getting food to go or not working out or sleeping in a little bit, whatever it may be. So I would recommend take those weekends, which are generally a little bit less stressful, and try to start your new habits on those days. Now, this won't work for everything, and for some people, maybe the weekends aren't the problem and you need those new habits on the work days. Again, I would say just go really slow. Give yourself a lot of grace. If you are doing really good for one week and then kind of fall behind the next week, that's totally normal. We get excited about new habits or new things and we are really good about them for a short time, and then we start to kind of lose that thrill and that energy for whatever it may be, and that's when we kind of tend to fall off the wagon. So if you go really slow and give yourself grace and just keep pushing, that's how you make it. Set small goals for yourself to reach on the way to your larger goal, and that will give you more motivation to continue on to the larger goal. If you have those small accomplishments that you make along the way, it will help you to take the time that you need to get to your larger goal and hopefully to stick with it. So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope I explained everything okay. I know for many of you these ideas probably aren't new, but I hope it was a good reminder for you as we head into the new year and as we all try to make 2021 much better than this last year has been. I hope that this just helped to give you some ideas and remind you of some good tips and tricks and ways to keep those new habits going into the new year, and just to keep pushing through and go nice and slow. As always, I would love it if you would like this video and subscribe and comment down below any new habits that you are trying to create or any habits that you've created recently that you're proud of or any goals that you're working towards. I would love to hear about them. Thanks, guys.